Hi sophomores, welcome back to these how-to tutorials. During this video, we are going to be talking about CSS and how to code CSS. As you can see, I already have my 4 pages already coded and ready to go. So my next step will be now to open Notepad++ and go to File, New, and I'm going to save it right away. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and we are going to name it Style. And then we're going to change the format to Cascading Style Sheets and hit Save. So now we can get started. So the first thing that I want to do is let's just go over just CSS as a whole again. As a reminder, CSS allows you to change the look of your website. It allows you to make it look pretty, to really showcase your work. And when coding CSS, you'll notice that it is a little bit different from HTML just because it gives you easier tags to work with. So in this case, when you're working with CSS, all you have to do is just tell the program what you want to stylize. You don't need any special carets or anything of those lines. You still need to open and close whatever you're working with, but you do not need all of these specific tags to work with things. All you have to do is just say whatever tag or whatever section of your website you are stylizing, and CSS will understand. So let's get started with this. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to stylize how my fonts look. So the first thing that I would do in this case will be at font face. And you can see it tries to give me already suggestions. You do the squiggly lines. I'm going to open and close it right away. And then I am going to go in between and start typing. So I am doing my font face. So I first need to tell it what type of font family I am going to be working with. And if you remember from what was in the folder, it's Bromello. And then I need to tell it, okay, what's the source of that? Where is that coming from? So source, just like we did in HTML, and then URL to tell it where it is. And it's in fonts, bromello.ttf. You will notice that after I tell the program what I'm trying to stylize and with what, you have to use the semicolons. You always have to do this just so that you separate things. So now that I did that, the next thing I want to do is my body. So anything that was within that body tag. So all you will have to do is just type in body. And again, the program recognizes, okay, now we are going to be stylizing anything in the body. Well, the first thing that I want to do with my body is change the background image. And in order to do that, all you have to do is just type in background image. And then I obviously need to tell it where it's coming from. So URL, and it's in that images/pattern.jpg. And I end with that semicolon. Now, I know that my background image is kind of small because I only have a square of a lemon pattern that I want. So I want to be able to stylize that. So I'm going to say that I want my background size, and I'm going to make it small. So I'm going to make it at 15%. That is because I only have one square of my whole pattern, and I want that pattern to repeat over and over again. So then I would need to make my background size small and then say background repeat and then tell it to repeat. So that's all I did, is I knew my background image was small, so I needed it to be repeated. So all I did is just tell the program with this. And again, with CSS, it's just that simple. All you have to do is just start telling it what you want to do, and it starts doing things for you. So I'm gonna make sure that I'm saving as I'm going. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to stylize that div ID that I named wrap. So in order to stylize our div ID, all you have to do is do the number symbol and then do wrap. So you do the number symbol and then you name which div ID you're working with. And in this case, I want to work with the width and the margins of it. So all I have to do is type in width, and I'm going to try with 800 pixels and see how it looks, and I can always come back and change this. And then I also want to work with the margin, and you'll see that as I type in margin, I have options of my margin in the bottom, left, right, top, offset. That is because there's many ways that you could style this. It's completely up to you and what you want to do. In this case, I want to work with margin left, and I'm going to say auto. I want it to just do its thing, but I also need to tell the same thing for margin right. I also want it to just auto. This just means it is going to automatically find the best space between the both of them. Now I'm going to think of any other things that I worked with. I worked with my header, and that is a tag I work with. But if you remember, I coded my header during my HTML, so I don't really need to worry about it. I can just skip that. So another tag that I did use was main. And now with my main, I want to work with the overflow. This just means that I am telling it that if the content is too big, instead of continuing from left to right all the way to cover everything in the page, I want it to be hidden, so it'll be cut. And that's essentially the only thing that I want to code with my main. Now I got to think of another tag. Oh, I also work with the nav tag. So I'm going to open that. I'm going to close that. So now, first thing I want to do with my navigation is I want to set a background image. So all I have to do is just say background image. Now I need to tell it where it's coming from. So URL, it's going to come from that images folder, and it's going to be the one that says nav.png. And make sure to add that semicolon. Now I need to figure out if I want the background to repeat. And I'm going to say repeat, but to -X. So once it touches that quadrant of -X, it's going to stop repeating. That's what I want it to do. Now I'm trying to figure out, okay, what is going to be the width? I'm going to try 200 pixels and see how that goes. Other things that I could stylize is, do I want it to float? And I do, but I want it to float to the right. So I want my navigation to go in the right. Again, you can put it on the left, wherever you want. Now I'm trying to think, okay, like how far do I want my padding in the bottom to go? And I'm going to say up to 500 EM. So now I figured out how my padding is going to go, so how much space there's going to be. I also need to figure out my margin, so how far from the end of the website it is going to be. that is what margin is. Padding is just how much space you're leaving between the end and the margin. So now I need to figure out my margin, bottom, and I'm gonna go up to -500 em. So that's what I have so far. Now I'm trying to think of other tags. So, and within the nav, there's many things that we coded that we could stylize. So I coded my main nav one, but I also had a nav UL, and that is that unorganized list. So I also want to stylize that. That is what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to do list style type. So what type of list do I want? And I'm just going to say none. Like, I don't want it to be in any specific type of list. I just want it to just hang out there. Next thing is, in that nav tag, as I am remembering, I also had the nav li, and that is the actual words that are going to show up with my buttons. So I get to, because it is font, I get to tell it what type of font family we're using, which is Bromello. I get to tell it the font size. And I'm going to go with 16 point. And then I get to tell it the color. Now, the cool thing about CSS is that you can either tell color by just saying white, black, blue, turquoise. But if you want a more specific type of color, you can do the numbers. I'm going to do 58, 59, 5B. And we are going to save this. And now we are just going to run this and just see how it is looking. So you can see right here, I have my background that's repeating. I have my banner. I have my navigation right here with a background just like I told it to. I have my buttons with the special font in black, and I still have many things that I can still work with. I can add padding in between my buttons just so that they're not all together. I also still need to fix this. As you can see, it's very hard to read, but all of them still work. Okay. I just need to fix how I'm linking to my other pages. So let's keep going. So now I want to fix my buttons because I didn't really like the way my buttons were looking. So I'm going to start with my buttons. So I'm going to make, I'm going to start with the width. And I want it to be 150 pixels. And I want my background color to be FAF2AE. You remember when we did graphic design and I gave you the option to go and look at the color wheel? That is where you can go and actually look at things for this and make sure that you like any colors in specific. You can write down the numbers of the colors and use them in here. I also want to work on the padding. So I'm going to do 50 px and 30 px. So that I'm adding space. I'm also going to look at my margin to the left. So how close is it actually going to be to my content? I'm just going to try 15 pixels. And then the last thing will be, where do I want my words to go? And for that, you do text, align, and I want them to be in the center. So the next thing that I would want to stylize would be my content div ID, and that is where all of my words are. So this is where I can determine if I want to put like a little box around it so that it's easier for people to read things. And that is what I'm actually going to do now. So I'm going to change the background color of that section of where my words are. And I'm going to make it white. But instead of just writing white, I am going to do it by the letter. And that would be F, 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 F. And then I want it I want the width of that to be 560 pixels. I want my padding to be 20 pixels because I want space, but not too much. I want it to float to the left because that is just how we read. And then I'm going to add some padding at the bottom. And I'm going to try 500 EM, just like I did before. And I'm going to add margin at the bottom to be negative 500 EM. So I'm just setting the boundaries for where it's going to go. Now, the last thing that I would want to stylize would be the footer. In this one, it's going to cover, this will be the last tag because we have essentially covered all of the tags. So I have a background image that I want to use where my footer is. So I'm just going to say background image. The first thing that I would do would need to tell it again where it's coming from. So URL, that images, it's footer.jpg. And then I need to tell it the height. I'm just going to try with 60 pixels. I'm going to add some padding to the left. And I'm going to try padding left. I'm just going to try 20 pixels and just see how that looks and see if I like it. I'm also going to add some padding at the top and see how we like that. And I'm just going to try 35. And the last time would be clear. It would be both. So that is just making sure you can still see everything. So that is pretty much everything that you usually stylize with CSS. Again, it's very simple. All you have to do is just very straightforward, tell it what you are trying to do. In this case, you just name it, like background image, background size, repeat, not repeat, where do you want it to float or not float? And then it just does it for you. And then as you can see, this is what it ends up looking like. So I have a website that I like, that it's working, and that is going to keep leading me from one to the next page. So this is just how I wanted it to look. There's nothing more that I want to change. I can go to my other pages and see that everything applied to it, that I changed everything I needed to, and that it's looking perfect. So this is really it for CSS. It's very simple coding. I hope this just made it easier for you to understand. And that is it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.